Welcome back to Fashion here. So time for my preview for the 2024 Qatar Grand Prix. So second last race of the season, we're almost done, but two more races and one more sprint left to go. So let's get this preview started. So starting off, as always, taking a look at last year's race. And last year was pretty unique for a number of reasons, but first, just going over the podium from last year's race, we had another Max Verstappen win with a McLaren 2-3. Oscar Piastri finishing second with Lando Norris in third. I believe that is Oscar Piastri's best race result last year, and of course, perhaps helped by the very unique situations in last year's Grand Prix, as tire wear and tire management was one of his weaknesses in his rookie season. Now, of course, Qatar was last year was our first time back at Qatar in 2 years, as F1 had its debut at the circuit in 2021, took a year off for the 2022 because of the World Cup, and then came back in 2023. And one of the big talking points last year was the curbs, and particularly the effects that the curbs were having on the tires. And effectively what happened was at Qatar you had these basically pyramid-shaped curbs that would oscillate the tires, basically make them vibrate when the car went over them. And the vibrations were so strong that it had the risk of causing basically spontaneous tire blowouts. So basically what Pirelli did during the Grand Prix was they made a limit to how long each tire could be used consecutively, or just used at all, I think it was. And this meant that you had a very unique race where basically everyone was limited to the same tire strategy, or basically the same tire stint length on a set of tires. Very, very unique race. Basically, it was a flat-out race, and drivers were doing pretty close to qualifying laps the entire race. That combined with the fact that it was very, very hot, very humid, one of the highest wet bulb temperature Grand Prix that we've seen in a long, long time, made it one of the toughest races in recent F1 memory. Of course, in terms of the actual racing, the big moment from last year was that turn one crash between George Russell and Lewis Hamilton. Hamilton going a little bit too aggressive at the first corner of the opening lap, and basically got himself punted out of the race at the first corner. In terms of other notable moments as well, Logan Sargent, like I said before, the heat was extremely bad at last year's race, and Logan Sargent actually retired from the race suffering from heat stroke, which I'm pretty sure that's the first time that's ever happened in F1 history. Luckily, looking at the forecast for this weekend, we'll get to that in a bit, but it's looking like that's probably not going to be an issue for this weekend's Grand Prix. Now, taking a look at this track itself, it's purpose-built circuit, very flat, pretty wide. So again, you do have some chances to overtake. I would say best chance to overtake is really going to be in turn one using the only straight with DRS, but you can get a switchback into turn 3. But that being said, like what happened in the sprint last year, if you go 3 wide into that turn 2, you can come out with a crash, as Ocon, Perez, and Hulkenberg learned last year. For the rest of the lap, you have a lot of medium speed, high speed corners, combined with some very unique slow speed corners as well, but not a ton of overtaking opportunities there. But if you're extremely bold and you have the grip, you can try and move on the inside of a corner like turn 6, like George Russell did on Oscar Piastri in last year's sprint. Now, taking a look at some facts about the track, it's 5.419 kilometers. We're expected to have 57 laps on Sunday. The race lap record's a 1:24.319 set by Max Verstappen last year. I was actually surprised the race lap record wasn't from 2021, as those cars are still about a little bit faster than the current F1 cars. But it turns out that they actually changed the track layout slightly, so the current track layout's about 100 meters longer somehow than the layout we used in 2021. Now, in terms of top speed of that fastest lap by Verstappen last year, it is a 231 kilometers per hour, which ranks 9th out of the 24 tracks on this year's calendar. Its downforce rating, according to my calculations, is 0.68, so somewhere between medium downforce and high downforce is in theory the optimum way to go here. But again, these are my very rough calculations, so drivers and teams may opt for a more medium spec wing if they, for example, want to protect their tires a little bit more, as tire wear is going to be very high with all those medium and high speed corners. Drivers will also be going full throttle for 55% of the lap. Now for pole conversion rate, this is very similar issue to what we had last time in Vegas, very small sample size, but this time going the other way. Instead of a 0% pole conversion rate this weekend, it's a 100% pole conversion rate. As last two pole starters at this track, Lewis Hamilton and Max Verstappen, both went on to win those races that they started on pole. Now, taking a look at the schedule, and we've actually have the return of Formula 2 for the first time since Monza, or actually, yeah, first time since Azerbaijan, so September. So we'll see how rusty the drivers will be. And also, there's going to be a lot of new drivers coming in. Quite a few drivers are basically leaving the series to go do other things, or perhaps lack of budget, and a bunch of drivers, some of whom are basically practicing for a full-time F2 seat next year, are going to be making their debut both this weekend and next weekend at Abu Dhabi. So for Friday, Formula 1, FP1, 4:30 in the afternoon, and then F2 qualifying 7:10 in the evening. It is a sprint weekend, so we'll be using the sprint format, not the normal FP1, 2, 3 format for this weekend. So sprint qualifying Friday night, 8:30 p.m. local time. The expected temperature 18 degrees and clear. Saturday, sprint for the F1 race will be at 5 p.m. local time, and then the sprint race for Formula 2 will be at 7:20 p.m. local time. Qualifying for the main Grand Prix 9 p.m. and again temperature for that qualifying session expected to be 19 degrees and clear. Then we get to Sunday Formula 2 feature race, 3:20 in the afternoon, with the Grand Prix expected to start at 7 p.m. and the temperature for the start of the Grand Prix is expected to be around 21 degrees and again clear. No real risk of rain at all this weekend. Tires for this weekend, like I said, tire wear is very high, stress on the tires, especially lateral load, because of those medium and high-speed corners. So the tires that would be used this weekend are the softest three tires in the Pirelli range, soft C3, medium C2, and the hard C1. And just as we get some torrential rain on the roof, I'm sure the mic's going to pick that up, but can't really be helped given where I live. All right, moving on. Oh, is that next? Yes, that is next. Okay, best qualifiers at this track. Again, pretty small sample size. We've only had 2 races here. So best qualifier number 1, Fernando Alonso. Median qualifying gap to his teammate, about 7.5 tenths of a second. Number 2, Max Verstappen again, 100% rate. Out-qualified his teammate on average 6.7 tenths of a second. And number 3, what a surprise, 100%, but median margins much smaller, 2.2 tenths of a second. Now, looking at the worst qualifiers, Lance Stroll, 0%, average qualifying margin a positive 0.718. Number 2, Sergio Perez again, 0%, and then a margin of 6.7 tenths. And number 3, Esteban Ocon, again 0%, just shy of 3 tenths of a second. So it'll be interesting to see how those 6 drivers do in qualifying this particular weekend. Now, last weekend we talked about championship permutations for the Drivers' Championship. Obviously, that's all wrapped up. Verstappen's won, and that's something that Lando Norris and McLaren don't have to worry about until March. But they do still have a Constructors' Championship fight to worry about. So, championship standings going into the race, McLaren 608 points, Ferrari 584, 24 points behind with 103 points remaining. Of course, the maximum points is much higher than for the drivers because, of course, each team has 2 cars, so a lot more points on offer there. So, for McLaren to win the Constructors' Championship this weekend, they must outscore Ferrari by 20 points and not lose 9 points to Red Bull. The 9 points to Red Bull I don't think is a big deal, especially given that McLaren probably are going to be heavy favorites going into this weekend. And the fact is, Red Bull basically is just a one-car team with Perez fighting for the bottom points places with the B-Carb and with the Haas. So not really, I think, a big threat this weekend, Red Bull. But Ferrari, if things go really well for them, they definitely could be a threat. And I think, like, for example, realistically, if McLaren get a 1-2, Ferrari get a 3-4 in both the sprint and the Grand Prix, I think that will be just right on the edge of 20 points. So again, McLaren are going to have an excellent weekend, but Ferrari are also going to have a very good weekend as well if they want to get this continue this fight on to Abu Dhabi. But realistically, I think Vegas was Ferrari's best chance. Unfortunately for them, they didn't really have a great weekend. Mercedes had a 1-2 and took a boatload of points off of them. So again, we'll see how things go this weekend. I think Piastri really needs to step up. But the reality is he got a podium here last year, so I think he should be all right. Now, finishing up with my predictions for the weekend, like I've basically hinted before, McLaren should be very, very strong on this track, so I think I'm going to go with a McLaren 1-2 with Norris ahead of Piastri. Just on recent form, Norris has generally been the much stronger driver. Things were a little bit different last year, but that being said, I'm still going to go with the Norris. I think a little bit more likely than Piastri, but I wouldn't be surprised if things were actually the other way around. Third spot on the podium, hard one to call. Temperatures are going to be a little bit cooler than last year, and off the back of their 1-2, I think Mercedes perhaps could be in the fight. There are a couple long straights here, but there are a lot of high speed and medium speed corners here. So I think I'm going to go with Max Verstappen rounding out the podium in third. So there you go. There's my preview for the 2024 Qatar Grand Prix. Can't say I'm looking forward to this race a ton. Track's not that interesting. Atmosphere is not great. It's really late at night for me, so I'm probably going to just record it and watch it in the morning when I get up. But yeah, there you go. There is my preview for the 2024 Qatar Grand Prix. Goodbye.